The night before community service day, everyone was busy preparing. Like my roommates, I packed my things and went to bed early, thinking it would be an ordinary night. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a rustling sound. I'm a light sleeper, and usually, any noise can wake me up, but this sound was particularly clear, like someone rummaging through plastic bags, accompanied by occasional click sounds, like a plastic lid being pressed down. Strangely, it seemed that only I could hear this noise. Our dorm was arranged with the beds on top and desks below, and the sound was coming from near the balcony, where we had piled up many things, including several suitcases we had prepared for the community service. I was a bit annoyed and picked up my phone to check the time. It was just past 4 a.m., and the noise continued. I thought, who would be packing their stuff in the middle of the night and making such a racket? So, I knocked on the metal railing of my bed to signal them to stop. Sure enough, the noise ceased after I knocked. At that time, I was sleeping facing outward, and after hearing the noise stop, I impatiently turned over to face the wall. However, I couldn't fall back asleep after being woken up. I lay there with my eyes closed for a while, but still couldn't sleep. I checked my phone again and saw that half an hour had passed. I turned over once more to face outward. At that moment, I saw a scene that terrified me. My bed curtain was white with floral patterns, somewhat transparent, and there was a face pressed close to the outside of the curtain, its outline very clear. It was a big round face, and the most horrifying part was the lips, which were extremely red as if heavily painted with lipstick, and the nose was almost poking into the fabric, with a half-smiling, half-not expression, looking down at me. The expression was like a child's curious gaze through glass at an animal. To be looking down at me from above, that person had to be at least 2 meters tall, definitely not any of my roommates. I screamed in terror, but my voice sounded distorted. My roommates were awakened by my scream, and someone turned on the light. As soon as the light came on, the white face disappeared. My roommates were surprised to see me like that, and I told them what had happened. They were all scared too and didn't know what to say. After a while of silence, someone suggested I might have had a nightmare. I checked my phone again, and it was indeed almost 5 a.m. I preferred to believe it was a dream and that I had confused dream and reality. But then I thought, could that weird person have been rummaging through our stuff on the balcony, making those noises that woke me up? If I hadn't knocked on the railing and caught their attention, they wouldn't have been peering in at me. Who knows how long they had been watching me, perhaps staring at my back while I lay there. In my junior year, I was assigned to a mixed dormitory where all my roommates were senior students. However, they had all moved out for internships, so I lived alone for over half a year. Our dormitory had a layout with the bed on top and the desk below. My wardrobe was packed full and usually locked. Since it was summer, the air conditioning was on full blast, and the balcony door was tightly shut. I was worried about small animals getting in, so there were no large gaps in the room. I enjoyed staying up late, and that night, as usual, I finished a video call with my partner and prepared to sleep, but I wasn't sleepy at all. After a while, my wardrobe under the bed started making strange noises. At first, I thought it was the cabinet expanding and contracting with the heat, but the noise grew louder and more disturbing. I began to feel scared, too afraid to make a sound, and tried to ignore the noise, forcing myself to sleep, but it became increasingly intrusive, completely disrupting my ability to fall asleep. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I sat up and yelled a few curses. The noise gradually subsided. This happened several times, and I couldn't take it any longer, so I ran out to find the dormitory supervisor to check. The next morning, I called a few repairmen to inspect the dorm, but they found nothing. 2 days later, I went to class at 8 a.m. After coming out of the bathroom on the balcony, I habitually tidied my hair in front of the sink. I suddenly noticed a basin full of water in the sink. I didn't think much of it at the time and poured it out, but as soon as I turned back into the dorm, it hit me, and I fled in panic. That basin hadn't been used for half a year, and there was a clear dust outline underneath it. Moreover, the faucet didn't leak at all. I started worrying that someone had entered the dorm, but the school had recently tightened security patrols around the female dormitories, so this shouldn't have been possible. I forced myself to continue living in the dorm and spent about 4 more days in peace. Then the most terrifying thing happened. At around 2:30 a.m., I finished playing a game and got into bed, not feeling sleepy but thinking about an important presentation the next day. I decided to skip using my phone and just rest. I closed my eyes, thinking about my speech for the next day, planning to organize my thoughts briefly before falling asleep. Halfway through organizing my thoughts, I suddenly heard a sound in my right ear, feeling something rush from the foot of the bed towards my head, even causing the hair by my ear to flutter. This was absolutely impossible because my bed had heavy curtains that couldn't be moved by any ordinary breeze, especially on a calm, clear night. My hair stood on end, and I opened my eyes, but didn't dare move. After observing the darkness for a while and seeing nothing unusual, I reassured myself it was just an illusion and closed my eyes again. After a while, I heard a very clear sigh from the foot of the bed. Even more terrifying, at the same moment, an image of a person automatically appeared in my mind. It wasn't a ghostly figure, but a young girl in ordinary clothes, sitting at the foot of the bed with her legs hanging down. Normally, I have a poor imagination and never conjure up such images. I was so scared that I didn't even dare to breathe, nor did I reach for my phone, just frozen in place. Later, the foot of the bed moved slightly a few more times before everything finally calmed down after about half an hour. For the next week, I experienced several episodes of sleep paralysis until the summer vacation. When I went home, I finally told the people around me about it, and everyone said I should have moved out, that it was too terrifying. I later found out that my dormitory was indeed built on what was once a well-known cemetery. The story takes place on a night in October 2019. At that time, we had turned off the lights and were chatting in the dormitory. Suddenly, our Chinese roommate, who was on the upper bunk diagonally opposite, started reciting her ID number, even mentioning the exact address of a hotel near an airport where she had stayed. Initially, we thought she was joking and didn't pay much attention. But she repeated it several times and kept asking, "Do you know my ID number?" Everyone realized something was wrong. The dorm leader sternly stopped her, saying, "Don't joke around like this at night." However, she persisted, repeatedly asking, "Do you know my ID number?" The dorm leader felt something was really off and immediately informed the class teacher, but the teacher brushed it off, saying she was just pretending to be spooky. The next day, she started acting strangely, staring blankly with her arms crossed, shivering whether she was in the sun or taking a shower, constantly saying she was cold, and always trying to stay in the shade. During our lunch break, the people in our dorm gathered together and, in desperation, turned to Baidu to look up what kind of hysteria this might be. Google suggested it might be possession, but we didn't take it seriously. We were all materialists, although we often watched paranormal content for fun. But then, the cross necklace around the dorm leader's neck suddenly broke. We were all too scared to speak and quickly looked up ways to ward off evil spirits, asking a roommate who was going home for the weekend to pray at a church. The whole thing seemed too bizarre, like a joke, and we could only dismiss it as a coincidence. That night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, I was watching a movie until early morning. I thought I'd go to the bathroom before sleeping, but when I looked up, I saw something glowing in the gap between the curtains of the diagonal upper bunk. I pointed my phone towards it and saw her squatting on the bed, staring at me. Her expression terrified me, so I didn't go to the bathroom, instead covering my head with my blanket and forcing myself to sleep. The next day, I told the dorm leader about it, and she asked the senior who had previously lived there. The information we got made us even more scared. For example, the senior once had a long phone call with her boyfriend throughout the night. The next day, her boyfriend said that after they had both fallen asleep, he heard a sound like a suitcase zipper being opened, but it was so clear it sounded like it was right next to the phone. However, the senior's phone was placed deep inside the bed, and the only place for suitcases was under the bed. Also, the senior had left a bottle of foundation in the dorm during the summer break. When she returned early, she found the empty bottle placed in the center of the table, with the liquid spilled on the mirror. The situation got so bad that the school sealed off her dorm and several neighboring ones, not allowing anyone to live there. The seniors' dorm was at the end of the first floor, while ours was at the beginning of the second floor, near the hallway. After hearing her stories, the dorm leader immediately called her mom. She started to tell her mom a few things, but the phone suddenly died and the screen went black. After repeatedly pressing the power button, it finally turned back on. The dorm leader continued talking to her mom, but the phone blacked out again and froze on the screen showing the 10 p.m. lights out time. The next day, all of us in the dorm moved out.